Brent Lee from the UnApologetics podcast. Hey, Brent, tell everybody hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Going pretty good. So, no video feed of Brent tonight, having a bit of technical difficulties, but we were able to get him on the line here. So you're just going to be staring at my beautiful face for the next hour or so if you're watching this on YouTube, but you can also find the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcast. This is Truth Wanted. This is the show where we talk about what people believe and why, and it is a call-in show. So if you see that number down there at the bottom of the screen, go ahead and call in. We have open lines, but joining me tonight is Brent Lee. Brent, go ahead and introduce yourself a bit, man. What is your podcast about?
So, my name is Brent Lee. You know, I do a podcast with my girlfriend Nikki. We're kind of odd, like we're an interracial couple, and I was heavily indoctrinated as a child. Mm-hmm. I was homeschooled. I wasn't allowed to talk to anybody that wasn't a Christian. So my whole life was bubbled in and everything. So I kind of had a hard time coming out of that. And mm-hmm. Nikki is a black woman who is she was a political science major. So she's extremely intelligent. And so a lot of the show, we talked a lot about politics. She's teaching me about politics, mm-hmm. and we frame it through going over these different stories and things like that. And, she teaches me about that. And then she's super unfamiliar with the Bible, or anything religious at all. Like, she was kind of already just like, I don't believe any of this stuff, and was super unfamiliar with it. So I teach her some about apologetics, and, I read her Bible stories, and her reactions are just fucking priceless.
That's funny.
It's a lot of fun. It's fun to hear us both learn in real time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I was talking to somebody this week about, I was talking about kind of my story to them a little bit, and I mentioned, I came out as an atheist to my community, and they're like, "What do you mean you came out? Like you were gay?" It was like, well, yeah, I guess if you don't grow up in a Christian community, you don't understand how, declaring yourself as an atheist is kind of a bigger deal, right? That just wasn't a concept that wasn't, really aware to them. So it is interesting, when you're introducing some of the, especially biblical concepts to people who really aren't super familiar with it. And you guys mentioned that you are an interracial couple, and you guys talk about that a lot on the show, right? Kind of,
that too. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually a central tenet. We don't really cover a lot. We actively try to mm-hmm. not talk about Donald Trump. We try to not, because it just gets redundant and you just get frustrated. And so we kind of try to veer away from that. And we do more stories from the root, mm-hmm. and more stories about white supremacy, and about inequality and things like that. And we really focus hard on those topics. And, Nikki's super passionate, and she's just so fun to talk to. And we were laughing and having a good time the whole time, but we're still talking about very serious issues.
Sure.
We try to bring a little levity.
Absolutely. A few years ago, I was, I did Tinder for a minute, right? And I went on a couple of dates with a girl who was black, and she was, if you don't know me, I'm 6'5", and this girl was 6 foot tall. And so I never got more stares in my life than when I was with this girl going out in public. And I think most of it was just in awe of just, our giganticness. But it was fun. It was very different, and it definitely different from the experiences of me growing up in the town that I lived at. That was definitely not seen as much. And so even in the place I was at there, which is San Antonio, which is, a very, very mixed community, people get stares about that, and people have their own thoughts about that, which is kind of interesting,
Oh yeah, and that's the thing is we were just actually not too long ago we went to dinner with Nikki's mom, mm-hmm. and we went to this. It's a nice place out on out on the water. It's beautiful. We're in Florida. We're a Florida-based show. Mm-hmm. So we go out on the water, and it's a beautiful little restaurant out there. And we went, and we were getting our seat and everything. And Nikki's mom was just like, "Do y'all always get stared at like this?" Mm. Because we just look odd. She's a bigger black woman, and I'm this mm-hmm. little skinny white dude, mm-hmm. and and we're constantly loudly talking about probably political shit that we shouldn't be talking about loudly in public. But
sure.
That doesn't help. But it was just funny to hear her reaction to seeing us together. Because usually we always were in private when we were with her mom, so it was funny to kind of see her experience what we experience regularly.
Right, right. Like, not only is this a regular thing, but you're talking about the regular stuff you guys talk about, which is probably not, great for Thanksgiving dinner conversations, right? So, yeah, it's very funny.
Yeah, it's almost like Phil Ferguson. We talk about everything you're not supposed to.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. You guys, if you haven't seen my episode with Phil Ferguson on this show, you should definitely check it out. That was very funny. A lot of stuff went down there.
He's awesome. I love him.
Oh, he's great. He's super great. But, yeah, guys, this is a call-in show, so we have a bunch of open lines. Come on in. I saw somebody call in before the show and then left who was a flat earther. I love to talk about flat earth. Look, here's the thing. We were talking about this before the show. Cryptozoology, all right? Where's the crypto community at? Come here, y'all. Let's talk about cryptos. Right. I want to talk about Bigfoot. I want to talk about Loch Ness. I want to talk all the stuff. Some people say I'm Bigfoot, and that's part of my culture. I do get that a lot. But where's the real stuff, man? That's what I want to hit up. But anyway, you're joining us live here with Brent Lee from the UnApologetics podcast, and we're just talking about life, talking about experiences. What else do you guys like to talk about in your podcast? Like, what's some of the most recent things you were talking about?
So recently we had an episode called the Andy Kaufman of Gods. Is our latest episode.
Okay, tell me about that.
Yeah,
What does that mean?
And well, I don't know if you know. Do you know much about Andy Kaufman?
I'm pretty familiar with Andy Kaufman, but maybe for those who aren't as familiar with his work and stuff.
Okay, so he was like the world's first troll.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, actually. Yeah, for sure.
Right, like he was able to be a troll. Like he would have been great in those videos where they like mess with people, but the cameras are all around, and then everybody comes out, it's just a prank kind of thing. Except that we didn't have any of that.
Sure.
Right. So he was just fucking with the crowd the whole time. Mm-hmm. And they really got upset a lot of times. And he would do specials on TV where he made the TV seem like it was messing up, and he was laughing at the crowd. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was sort of this opposite, sort of weird kind of comedy that he introduced. And I just feel like it almost seems like that's the way God is. I don't know, like the Christian God. Anyway, is, because we went, and it was actually, I read her the story of Balaam in the Bible, about the talking donkey. Because I was just like, I got to read you this story. I'm sorry. Like, if you're not familiar with the Bible, it's funny to hear this particular story. And it was like, and it was like God was talking through the donkey, but as the donkey. That was the difference. That was the difference. It wasn't like God was like, hey, I'm God, and I'm just speaking to you through this. No, he was like making it like it was the donkey talking, almost like he was trolling the dude. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like
trying to upset him. And
you can definitely see a lot of that in the Bible, and honestly, like a lot of that stuff, I think is very on purpose for what the genre was trying to teach. As far as like God can kind of do anything, and he can show up in all kinds of ways that will make you kind of doubt things, but you still need to kind of trust in the doubt. I think there's a lot of those kinds of themes showing up, and in that particular story, which you're talking about, which is the story of a prophet who is talking to this donkey, right? And this donkey is kind of complaining about, like, why do you treat me so badly and stuff. Like, there's kind of another metaphor there of it's been a while since I heard the story, but there's definitely like what seems absurd to us would have still seemed absurd to the audience that is reading this at the time, and I think that's kind of the point there, which is an interesting way to look at the literature. But if you're a literalist who thinks like this is something that actually happened in the history of the world, then that's a whole other kind of conversation, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, which I was when I was a Christian, I was total literalist. Everything, all this shit was real, and when I was being raised too, it was funny because it was right in the middle of the satanic panic. So my mom was constantly filling my head with the fact that if I talked to other people, demons could get in me, and that's a terrible thing to do to a child.
Oh yeah, like so I was my growing up story is just kind of interesting, just because of the beliefs I did and didn't have. The demons thing was always kind of bullshit to me a little bit, just because, like, I guess I'd seen so many movies and stuff. It never seemed real. And I guess it helped that I didn't grow up, Pentecostal or anything like that. So I never experienced, people claiming to have speaking in tongues and stuff like that, kind of the more spiritual aspects of Christianity, like literal spirits, I guess, invading people's bodies and stuff. So I don't know. Yeah, that's interesting how even we can both call ourselves Christians, and I mean, this is obvious for anybody who grew up this way, you can still find differences in your experiences and what you believed, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a lot of distinctions there between the different doctrines, and that's almost my sticking point, honestly, when I'm talking to Christians and stuff. The main question that I like to ask people now that I'm an atheist is, if all these different doctrines exist, right? And I've met people from plenty of different doctrines, and they're all wholeheartedly trying to seek the truth of Jesus and everything, right? They're all the way in. They're in it, and they're receiving these messages from the Holy Spirit that are all different.
Yeah.
Why is that? Why can't he communicate one message to all of his people?
Oh, you know why, Brent?
You know what I mean?
You know why, Brent? There's it's a very simple reason why. There's false prophets, Brent. They don't have the true message. Your denomination is the one that has the true message, right?
That's right. That's what I get most of the time.
Yeah,
if they're doing it wrong.
For sure. I mean, if in the Baptist kind of culture that I grew up around, there was a lot of that kind of talk of, these other denominations do not have it right. Like, don't be a lukewarm Christian, like in Revelation where God spits out kind of the lukewarm people that, that came to heaven. That's what we'd call them, right? The lukewarm Christians who just did not adhere to the real standards. You had to believe the exact same thing about gay marriage, about baptism, about all the points, or else you weren't doing Christianity right, bro. Like, that was the kind of Christianity I was taught was there is a list of requirements that you do have to have, or else you're not the real deal,
Right. And it's funny because, and this is the other thing is, and when it comes to like when you're getting saved, right, you go to this church, you're there, they play the music, they make it all so emotional. The music all sounds emotional. They got the strings going, they got the keyboard, the guitar, and it's the dude up there is very charismatic, and then he says, all right, now if you believe that the Lord Jesus is calling you, stand up in front of everyone and declare that you are now a Christian by standing up. And okay, I see you there, sir. I see you. Okay, you can say, okay, sir, I see you right there. I see you. Can say, and this person is stood up, and they have no fucking idea that there's a talking donkey in the book that they're supposed to believe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
So now then they go backwards, and now they go back to the people that they trust now and ask, hey, when people ask me about this, I don't understand what I should say to defend what I believe. So, okay, here's this book on apologetics.
Right.
And here's the reasons why you believe. That's not the way belief works.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's like this instant.
You're retroactively defending something that you've already come accustomed to believing, right? And like that was definitely my problem. It was like, wow, I didn't even realize how ignorant I was of my own religion, as far as like, wow, I hadn't not read the whole Bible. I don't think I read all 4 Gospels until I was in college, and it was just like, and I'm supposed to be like, this is supposed to be the biggest and most important thing of my identity, is that I am a Christian and that I am a servant of God. And just like the more I tried to understand it, the more explanations I got from things, and the more these explanations kind of conflicted, and then the whole structure just kind of falls apart. But you don't get to that place until you care enough to really look into it, right? And there are some people who care enough, and then they become apologists. And then there's the rest of us that have shows at the Atheist Community of Austin, I guess, and do what we do now. But
that's right.
Like, for me, like, I don't blame people for not knowing, because they don't tell you that. They don't tell you that way. Like,
No.
I never went to a single Sunday school lesson, and believe me, I've been to a lot of fucking Sunday schools where I heard about the story of the talking donkey. That was not a thing that came up. I'm sure it's there in some places.
But one they tell you.
Yeah, it's just not. Kind of put that one behind because hey, it's Old Testament, right? It's kind of crazy, but yeah.
Magical shit happened back then, It was like Lord of the Rings time. Like,
hell yeah, curses and shit. Oh yeah. It's
all real though.
Yeah, no, there was the idea of like the cessation of miracles and stuff after the life of Christ. Like that's also like a theological thing that people say. Like basically a lot of this after Christ, like a lot of that stuff that happens in the Bible just kind of doesn't happen anymore. Which is just like, okay,
right?
Isn't that
like
convenient?
Yeah, I mean, almost just like a perfect omnipotent God making a mistake and then having to correct it. Yeah,
it's just more like, we can't prove this stuff to you. You got to have faith that this stuff happens. You weren't there.
Yeah,
right.
And it was funny too because like I used to be. I mean, I was so in it. Like I was so hardcore. Like for instance, I used to listen. There was this radio station called 93.3 FLZ, and it was basically the pop. It was like the pop thing, but they did like a morning show, and I listened to the morning show and stuff. And I remember the one time they were talking about this woman who had like taken a key or something and like heated up the key and burned kids with it to get demons out.
Oh my God!
And it was awful, yeah. And one of the hosts of that show said, "Oh, well, that's what religion does to you." And I was like, "Oh, hell no! I'm calling those motherfuckers."
Oh.
And then I ended up, and I yelled. I mean, I was just all up in arms about this shit, just so upset. And then I was the fucking commercial for the show after that for a while.
Really? Oh, wow.
They're arguing with me on,
Of course.
Yeah.
Oh man. There's this Catholic radio station that I used to listen to on my drive here to the studio. And like they had call-ins and stuff in there, and I was so tempted sometimes just to be like, hey, they talked about. I mean, they talked about the things Catholics talk about. They talked about abortion, and they talked about like all the kind of pet issues there and stuff. And some of the stuff was kind of, a lot of the stuff was pretty benign. To them sharing stories about good things that happened in their community and stuff. But sometimes it was like, hey, you're wrong because of this, or you need to fix your life because of this. It's like, man, I wish you wouldn't tell people that because that's not super great. But